Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Everyday Strong with Dr. Michael G. Daniels. This is your host, CB Baker, and welcome to the show, Dr. Daniels. And today's episode, we have a direct request from someone that watches the podcast, and I'm going to read some of it verbatim so we can make sure we get the topic right, because it's kind of long. It goes like this. My suggestion for the podcast is, what does a woman do when she is broken? She's divorced, lost her job, lost her nice home. She may be a single mom, or she may not have kids at all. How does she begin to heal and repair herself, start a new life, or just live? So that's part of the topic today, Dr. Daniels. So she makes a good point. And I know for women, and we've seen it on TV. Mm-hmm. You know, they devote their whole lives to the man, and then they get a divorce, or he dies, and now the whole world is kind of just flipped upside down. And we have now seen a whole generation, now more than one, 2 or 3 generations of women, you know, becoming more empowered and working more. But what do we say to a woman that's going through this emotion where they feel like their whole world is turned upside down?
You know, I think that the question that this member brings up, or this listener, I should say, brings up, is a very poignant one, in that many women find themselves in that situation, you know, where they feel like they have exhausted all of their energy, you know, and they have lost trust in the way the world is supposed to work. You know, if you put everything into it and it doesn't work, you know, if you've given it everything you got and it doesn't work, after a while you begin to lose faith in the fact that it ever will work. You know, it's almost like the world has sold you a bill of goods.
Right.
And so sometimes for some people that will cause them to become, you know, very inward, in that they will hold their feelings in, you know, they will kind of push people out because they don't want to be hurt again, you know. And so people outside, you know, will look in and say, well, they're bitter, you know, but it's not about them being bitter. It's about them trying to protect themselves from the pain that's been caused, you know, because of, you know, any number of things that they've had to come against, you know. And so I think that the thing that anytime a person has been broken, I think the first thing that they have to do is to not look for that which broke them down to be their source of rejuvenation. You know, see, oftentimes what happens is, you know, and when I'm counseling women, as we talk about the things that have devastated them, you know, and it could have been a bad relationship, you know, it could have been that they were overlooked for promotion. They've worked the hardest, obviously, but yet someone comes in brand new, you know, and they get the job, you know, just because they are a man.
Right.
Well, see, what we tend to look to is that which has caused us the pain to cause us to be better. You know, like, for example, if you're in a relationship and your husband walks away from you, right, then what we look to is for him to somehow change some things. If you would help me with these children, if you would help pay this bill, if you would help do that, if you would help do that. And when he disappoints you more, it keeps you in that sense of brokenness. And so I think the first thing that women have to do is to not look for the source of their pain to be the redeemer of their pain. And whether it's that man or another man, you know, because people are people. The other thing I think that would help women is if they did not feel that they had to assume all the responsibilities, you know. And I love the fact that women, you know, jump in and they want to take all the children, they want to do all that, but that kind of adds to their sense of brokenness. You know, you mentioned the fact, well, what if there is a divorce, you know, for example? Well, typically when there's a divorce, most women feel that they need to have custody of the children, that they need primary custody of the children. For various reasons. But, you know, I would suggest that, you know, that's not necessarily what needs to happen. There is a movie that came out some time ago, Boys in the Hood, and it highlighted a woman who came to a conclusion, and her conclusion was, I have to reset where I am. Angela Bassett played the woman.
Right.
I have to reset where I am. In order for me to reset where I am, in order for me to be the best I can be for my child, I have to be the best I can be for myself. I think women don't do that oftentimes, that they'll sacrifice everything for their children. They will take on all that burden. They will wear themselves down so that in the hopes that give my children everything and I'll just take less. But what happens is the opposite, because when you wear yourself down, you have nothing else to give.
Right.
So what Angela Bassett did was she took her son and she gave her son to her son's father. And she said, you take on this burden while I reset my life. And how she did that resetting was she went back to college. She completed her undergrad. She got her master's degree. And she, elevated herself so that she could reacquire, a standard of living that would allow her now to not have all the burdens that she had before.
Right.
Now, of course, in the movie, when she went to get her son back, her son made a decision, which is, I'm just going to stay with my dad. But that doesn't mean she still couldn't be a mother to him.
Right.
That just meant she could now reset her life and move forward. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of women feel uncomfortable doing that, because they kind of think that means they're shirking their responsibilities. And it's not about shirking your responsibility. It's about resetting so you can be fully equipped to do that which needs to be done without always exhausting yourself of energy. If you're giving out more than you're getting in, that's not sustainable.
Yeah. And I often tell people, you can't pour from an empty cup.
No.
And you'll get frustrated. Like you said, you will feel like there's no end in sight. What is the point of this? And then it doesn't take long before you get to that ultimate thing is, why God? And is there even a God? And you start questioning everything. And the funny thing that when you was talking, what came in my mind was, back when we did the episodes about the marriage and relationship series, you said when something bad happens, we tend to do the opposite of what we need to do in order to make it better.
Right.
Like if your spouse cheated on you, you want to draw back. Where really what you should be doing is going forward and showing more love to them, because obviously there was a reason why this happened.
Right.
So what I tell people, what I'm getting here is, instead of withdrawing when stuff isn't going your way, maybe it's because you're not putting forth enough effort. So go more into it. And also when you start doubting, and where this moment is when you start doubting God's plan, that's when you should be like, you know what? Let me believe more.
Absolutely. And believe in two things, not just that God can do, but God will do for me.
Right.
And I'll give you an example of when I say that women they allow guilt to break them. They, the presumption is oftentimes that it was that person that harmed me that broke me. But a part of it is the guilt that breaks them. And I'll give you an example. Let's say that a woman looks and her daughter has a child. Let's say that the daughter doesn't seem to be caring for the child the way the mother thinks the daughter should care for the child. The average mother will step in and take the child.
Yep.
And they will make sure that child is taken care of. Well, why not find the father of the child?
Right.
And make his mother responsible, just like you are becoming responsible.
Right.
Look at how many grandmothers are really raising grandchildren. Even though the mothers are there, the grandmothers are still the ones that are raising. They're taking 40% of the responsibility to raise the grandchildren. And I'm saying because they would feel guilty if they didn't and something happened to the child. And so I'm saying that helps to add that weight on their shoulder Because if you've had weight on your shoulder with your own children, if you've bore that burden by yourself, now you have grandchildren and you're bearing that burden by yourself, that's unsustainable. And all that weight keep pushing you down and pushing you down and pushing you down. And so you are perpetually broken. It's because you haven't had a break.
Right.
You haven't had a time to be you. And so I would say to all women that find themselves under that constant pressure, that you have to go back and find you. You know, you have to find who you are, and you have to be the best you can be first before you keep taking on the responsibilities of everyone else. When I'm counseling women who've gone through situations, I remind them of a couple of things. And one is this: no matter what you're going through, no matter what life is dealing you, you were a woman first.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you were a woman before you were a wife. So why are you allowing your being a wife to cause your womanhood to diminish?
Mm-hmm.
You were a woman before you were a mother. So why let your motherhood cause your womanhood to diminish? And that shouldn't be. You shouldn't have to decide between one or the other. You should always take care of what you are and what you have always been and what you will always be. Because that female will be a woman when the children are grown.
Mm-hmm.
She will be a woman when the man either dies or when he divorces or what have you. So you got to take care of who you are first, because that's the core of what's going to create a sense of credibility for yourself and self-fulfillment for yourself. So rather than acting like the woman does not exist and just devoting every ounce of your energy to being a mother, don't forget the woman exists.
Right. You know, what's interesting in your response is that's how men say talk to other men.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is wrong with you? Be a man. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But you don't ever hear women say that, like, be a woman. You don't ever hear that. You hear be a mother. Like you said, it's like it's broken down in subcategories where you're like, okay, well, you're not a woman, quote unquote, if you're not a proper mother.
Right.
Right.
Women, unfortunately, and I don't want women to think that I'm bashing how they treat each other, but women, unfortunately, help create that which causes women to feel broken.
Mm-hmm.
Because women
are they putting too much pressure on themselves?
Yes, that's my point. See, women make it as if women cause women to think that if you're not the best mother, then you aren't doing your job. You know, women tend to tell women you need to sacrifice everything for your children.
And then let me flip the pancake here. Because, you know, you was talking about the raising of children,
Mm-hmm.
and it's all, you got the mother, then now you got grandmother raising the child, but nobody went over to, like you said, to the father's the grandparent side or whatnot. Now, a woman would sit here, if she was here for this podcast, she would say, well, we got to do that because the men are not taking care of their side of the deal.
I would say, I hear women say that all the time, but my point is that women take on the responsibility. That's one of my points.
So what you're saying is they don't even allow even the sort of for here, the ability for the man to even come in for real.
Well, what I'm saying is this: is that oftentimes people take this stance. If you don't do it the way I would do it, you don't know how to do it.
How to do it.
So therefore, I have to do it.
Right.
You know. And I'll use myself as an example. I remember when my son was about a year old or something along those lines. And my mother-in-law, whom I love very dearly, who I think is an excellent mother, excellent grandmother, did not approve of the way I was teaching my son, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Because he was younger than a year. I took the bottle away from him. And so her thing was, I was making a huge mistake in taking the bottle away from him. That was her thought. So what she did is that she went out and purchased bottles to give to him.
Right.
behind my back.
Right.
Right. So she was taking on that responsibility to saying, I'm going to do it because he don't know what he's doing.
Right.
Now, here's why I took the bottle away from him. Because one day I'm sitting in the hospital visiting my brother who was hospitalized at the time. And my son, I gave him a bottle to calm him down. He unscrews the top of the bottle and turns it upside down and pulls it out. And I said, if you got sense enough to screw the top off
Right.
and pull it out, you don't need the top on anyway.
Right.
Right? So I handed him, I'm drinking a drink. I handed him a drink and he started drinking it.
Right.
And I'm like, well, obviously you don't need to suck on a bottle because
Right.
you know how to hold,
Right.
and drink. But her mindset, because he was so young, see, she kept telling me that boys learn slower than girls, that young boys, infants learn slower than girls. So I was hurting him by taking him off the bottle.
Right.
So she took on that responsibility because there were some times I didn't know what I was doing.
Right.
And I'm saying that I think that women to their own detriment sometimes assume that if they don't do it, it won't get done.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not necessary. That's not true. If you don't do it, that doesn't mean it won't get done. It may not get done the way they want it to get done.
Right.
But it doesn't mean it won't get done.
I'm gonna ask this question. So when that happens, has the inadvertent consequence of that allowed for men to not be in their kids' families if it's a broken home or if it's a child out of wedlock?
Well, what I can say is this: is that what I did is what I think some men do. I said to, without saying it verbally, but I said it to myself, because at the time my wife was siding with her mother that,
Right.
Mama knows best. So I just said, okay, that means the next time I have to go visit someone in the hospital, I'm not going to take him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to leave him here. The next time I got to go do something, I'm not going to take him. See, because when my son was young, I took him with me. If I had to do something at church, I would take him.
Right.
I would take him somewhere. I would take him with me.
Right.
Because my thought was, if you're with me, you will learn because you will see how I do it, and
Right.
you will learn. Well, when that came about, then I said, okay, you all watch him.
Right.
And so, not that I was trying to be mean, it was like, okay, I'm happy to
Right.
not have to watch him while I am doing this or while I am doing that.
Right.
Now, someone may have thought, I don't know, they never said it, but someone may have thought, see, he's not a good father. He's shirking his responsibility. No, I was perfectly willing to take him with me everywhere I went.
Right.
But if you tell me that, I shouldn't, then why should I work hard if you're telling me you're willing to do the work for me?
Right. And, the interesting thing about that is what I tell people is like, okay, if you was at a job and you was working and your supervisor came over you all the time telling you how to do it.
Or doing it for you. Not just telling you, but doing it for you.
Right.
What would you do?
Right. You would just sit there.
And let them do it. Right. So, and I think that, I just think women take on too much. I think they do. They take on too much. And I know a lot of them will say, well, I had to. Well, but I know my mother and father separated when I was young, and they divorced when I was young. And I love my mother. And my mother went through everything she could go through to get her children with her. Mm-hmm. She did. And she sacrificed. I cannot tell you the sacrifices that she made for us, the things that she did not do for herself, the times she did not eat so we could eat. Because her concept was she needed to be there for us. Mm-hmm. Now, I moved back with my father, okay? When I was early teenager. And guess what my father did? He fed me. He clothed me. He put a roof over my head.
Right.
He made sure I went to church. He did all those things that my mother thought she had to do.
Right.
Because she, for whatever reason, felt like if she didn't do it, it wouldn't get done because he didn't have the fortitude to do it. But as it turned out, he did.
Right.
You know, and so I love her for the sacrifices she made, but I gotta tell you, I wish that she had not have made as many sacrifices as she did make. I remember one, and this is, true story. I remember one time I came up here and I was looking at my mother, and I had to go in my room and literally tears coming out of my eyes, crying, because it dawned on me everything she was doing for us. I was about 14 at the time.
Right.
I'm thinking, wow, look, I can't believe she's putting up with all this for our sake.
Right.
And it hurt me to see what she was going through for us.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But she didn't have to, but she felt like she had to.
Right.
But she could have very well said, you know what, y'all hard-headed kids, you're gonna move with your dad.
Right.
He would have had no choice, just like when I lived there. And I never got the impression that he felt like, it was a horrible thing that he was taking care of me.
Right.
Matter of fact, when I finally decided to move away from him, he came to me and said, "Why are you leaving?"
Right.
And I said, "Girl, because I wanted to go to college in Virginia, and I knew that it would be easier for me to move up here."
Mm-hmm.
But he tried to convince me not to move out of his house, to stay there. So, it wasn't like he was not willing to take care of me. He wanted to take care of me.
Right. So now let's go back to the woman. So how do we get, when a woman is completely broke down and they're rock bottom, how does she find the will to pull herself up and to pull herself up out that hole and to flourish?
Well, see, I don't think it's a question of will, and I'm judging by the question that the individual brought up. It's a question of opportunity. When she says, "How do you do it?" that tells me that she's saying, "I've tried everything and nothing seems to be working. So how do I regain the confidence to trust a man again? How do I gain the confidence to make things happen again, to trust even the church again?" Because like you said earlier, why hadn't God protected me? Well, the first thing you have to do is you have to understand that the church wasn't the enemy. The church wasn't the enemy. We have to understand that just because people hurt you don't mean their intention was to hurt you. They're just doing what they think is right at the time, because people can try to protect someone else and end up hurting you. You know what I'm saying? Right. And I think that's what we have to think about, is that that's not it. If you have a child out of wedlock, let's say, and their old school churches were like this. If you have a child out of wedlock, the pastor would set you down, right? You can't sing on the choir pregnant and you're not married. You can't usher. You can't do this. You can't do that. And there's a text in the Bible that even says, that you remove the person, you put them out, so to speak. Well, that can give you a sense that the church just turned against me, right? But you have to, rather than get mad at the pastor, you have to ask yourself, why did he do it? Did he do it because he hated me? Or did he do it because he was trying to help me? See, it's just like any form of punishment. Punishment is not meant to break you. Punishment is meant to teach you a lesson. Unfortunately, some of us punish so cruelly that it causes us to be broken rather than for us to learn a lesson from it. But I have to ask myself, were they really trying to break me? Was that really their intent? Now, if I conclude that their intention was to break me, then that should give me the motivation to say, I'm going to teach you something. Right. That you cannot keep me down. Right. If I determine that their motivation was not to break me, then I have to say, well, okay, if that was not why they did it, so now what do I do about it? And in both cases, you do the same thing. You go back and you ask yourself, where am I at now? And what do I need to do for me? Not what do other people need to do for me, but what do I need to do for me? So if it's because my husband has left me and McDonald's pay is not getting it, I should not say to myself, well, I got to stay here. If I only take one class at night for night school,
right,
you know, to get me moving somewhere else. And see, what that might mean is these 4 kids I got, I can't take care of them right now. I might have to say, you know what, to that man, you going to take these kids.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I might have to go to someone and say, help me with these kids so I can get back in school. Mm-hmm. And I might have to, you know, that might be 2 years of my life where I go to community college or 1 year if I get a certificate. And, you know, and you do it step by step. You know, for example, let's say you want to get a degree in nursing, right? It's because you know that once you get that RN degree, mm-hmm. you can pretty much, you know, survive. Right. Well, you don't shoot for the RN degree right away. The first thing you do to get off French fries is you get your CNA, right? Mm-hmm. Certified Nursing Assistant. So now I know I can get a job so that my employer will perhaps help me with tuition. Mm-hmm. Then I go get my LPN because now it's only another year from that, right? Now I got my LPN. Now I'm a licensed practical nurse. Well, you know what? I probably make enough money now where I can buy me a house, right? Then I go ahead and get my 2-year degree as a registered nurse.
Right.
Well, now I'm making enough money where, you know, I can bring my kids back with me now.
Right.
And I can take some vacations. And then I go ahead and get my BS in.
Right.
And so now, you know, 2 years down the road, now I can keep going. And here's one thing I think people should think about. Whenever you're in a position, ask yourself one simple question. Like some people say, well, that's too far out. That's 4 years down the road. Well, you're going to be 4 years older anyway.
Right. Time is going to move regardless. And then another thing I tell people too is you're what, 58?
Me?
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm 60.
60. You're 60 years old. Now, 30 years ago, you was 30.
That's right.
Now, you still feel like you're young, can do some things. Mm-hmm. Right. God willing, you got another 30 years left.
Well, let's hope so.
Right. You know, just for 30 years of active.
If I get 30 years, I'm doing good.
Right.
Let's face it.
But let's look at that. There's somebody right now at like 27, 28, dang near about to throw the towel in. It's like, for what? You can go to school for another 10 years and then come out at 38, 40 years old with still a lot of life left to be able to make a big difference.
Either way, you're going to get older. Right. Either way, you're going to get older. So do I spend the next 2 years on French fries at McDonald's with no hope, or do I go ahead and take a few classes and end up after 2 years where I'm now moving forward in my life? Right. Because either way, I say, and that might mean you can't hold on to everything you're holding on to, and that's key. That woman is probably right. I cannot keep these 3 kids and go to school, and it's too much, and it's just too much. And I think that women sometimes have to just tell themselves, "Hey, I cannot do everything. I just cannot do it all. You cannot keep bearing the burden of the world." You know, you might have to lay something aside, you know. And so, because you can't work a 10-hour day, come home and do homework, and cook dinner, and then make sure everybody get bathed and you know, all that stuff. Because it's only 24 hours in your day. So that means you have to figure out a way to say, well, wait a minute, wherever that father's at, listen, you're going to have these kids, you know, I go to school on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. You're going to have these kids on Monday, Wednesdays, and Friday evenings while I'm in school. You know, you're going to have these kids on one day of the week on Saturdays, and I might take them on Sundays. You have to split that responsibility and not put all that burden on yourself. Now, I know some women are not going to like this concept. I can hear them now saying, he's crazy. Right. But you can't worry about if the girlfriend is going to be with your children. You know, because a lot of women will be like, well, I don't want the other woman, you know, helping to raise my child. I don't want the other woman looking at my child. Hey, listen, if your child is in daycare, another woman is looking at your child. Right. You know, you can't just assume that the other woman's going to hurt your child. You know, because their father is there. And that father, if you thought enough of that man to allow him to, you know, impregnate you, then obviously he's not as bad as, you know, he's not so horrible that he's going to harm his children, you know. So that enables you to move forward. But you can't hold on to everything. It's just, it's humanly impossible for most people. And the more you hold on to your responsibilities, the more weight you have on your shoulders, and the more weight, you've gone through training as an athlete. You can lift 300 pounds, but you can't keep it on your shoulders.
Right. Absolutely right.
And you might can pick it up and hold it there for a while, but if I tell you walk around all day with it,
right,
it's not sustainable. That's what breaks women, is that they'll pick up the responsibility and they'll hold it for 10, 20 years, and it's not sustainable.
Right.
You might can keep it during the summer. You might can keep it, but you can't keep it forever.
Right. You're absolutely right. And before we close, I would like to make a statement too, is Pastor, what I also believe too, for people out there that think there's not enough time in the lifespan, this is my thought process. What you see here, as you always hear this during a funeral, this is the vessel, the body, the spirit is gone. But they don't ever talk about that when a person's living. It's like, once your spirit is there, this is the vessel that you are carrying around that ages. Your spirit does not have to age. No. You can walk around and still do massive things, great things throughout your life from age 0 to age 95. And there's and you could keep going until it's time to come home.
Well, let me give you a quick biblical reference. Look at Moses' life when he was young, and look at Moses' life when he was old. When he was young, we don't even know much about his life.
That's right. Yeah.
It was only when he was an aged man,
right,
that we know all the great things that he did.
Right.
Yeah. So you're absolutely right. Life can begin at a certain age, not end at a certain age.
Right.
Because the mind can still be sharp, and we can still make a difference. And I want to tell all these young folk that 30 is not old, 30 is young.
Yes, it is.
30 is young, 40 is young. And so if you're facing those burdens at 40, you don't say, well, I'm too old to go back to school. Don't say I'm too old to change careers. Don't say I'm too old. You're never too old to enjoy yourself.
Right.
You're never too old, to go to the beach and just walk on the shoreline. You're never too old to go to the park and just enjoy the beauty of the park. It doesn't take money to go to a state park and enjoy it.
Right. You're absolutely right.
It doesn't take money to do those kind of things. You got to do something for yourself. It doesn't take money to do things for you all the time. It doesn't take money to go sit on the back and just paint your fingernails and just enjoy being where you are. Sometimes you have to tell the kids, you all go here.
Right.
And the woman has to take her own time. And so I would suggest to any woman out there that feels themselves, out of energy and broke down and can't make it, it's just like we tell couples, you need a date, a date night. Just like, with children, you give them a play date. Every woman needs their own date night where they date themselves. Every woman needs a date when you date yourself, when you pamper you, when you feel like a woman again. So you get re-energized. And you don't need money for that.
That's right.
All you need is to take care of yourself.
That's right. Well, thank y'all so much for listening. This is your host, CB Baker. Till next time.